College football playoff results, well, at least the first poll's out, and we're going to talk about that and some big matchups in this Alabama LSU game. Welcome to Cover Crimson, everybody, brought to you by mybookie.ag. Let's get this thing going. All right, with Clint Lamb, I'm Mick Gillispie. Great to see you guys, and Roll Tide to you here on Cover Crimson, covercrimson.com. All right off the bat, we got the first look at the college football playoff rankings. Alabama at number 11. Your thoughts?
Isn't that about what you expected, Mick? I mean, yeah. I was thinking it was possible for 12, but 11 just felt right to me. So I wasn't shocked at all with where they're at. First round matchup currently, going on the road and playing Texas in Austin. What do you think about that matchup, that potential matchup?
I like it. Look, I think Alabama can go anywhere and win. And if they get in, they're maybe the most dangerous team in there, of the teams that aren't like getting by. So that would be a fun matchup.
Yeah, I think it would be a fun matchup. I mean, great helmet matchup, right? I mean, and the fact that Alabama didn't play Texas in the SEC this year, I think that would make it, an interesting matchup. I would say, based off of the way that they have things currently, they have number 6 seed Texas playing Alabama, number 11 seed. Winner of that game playing number 3 seeded Miami. I have to be honest with you. I think Alabama fans in that scenario, should that play out, they would probably need to be more worried about Texas than they would a potential second round matchup against Miami. I mean, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. I mean, I think that anywhere you put them, they would be, I think even though they'd be on the road, they'd probably be a favorite or pretty close to it. Maybe they'd be underdog to Texas, but I don't think it'd be by much. I mean, they would be right there at about even, but that's like I said before, you got a team that has gone to Texas before and won. You have a team that is used to being in the big games, and I think at that point they would have rolled through these next 4 games and they'd have a lot of momentum.
Well, so what would have to happen, right? If Alabama were to be in this position at the end of the year, that would mean that they would have to win out, in my opinion. So that means that you would have to go on the road this weekend and play well against LSU, well enough to win. And you would have to go on the road and play Oklahoma. Not a great team, but going to Norman, Oklahoma is never easy. Right. Alabama, so it's been a long time since Alabama's had to do that. So that would also mean that they would have needed to have gotten a win there as well. So these road woes, I guess that you can say, that Alabama's been dealing with, as far as, going to Vanderbilt and losing, going to Knoxville, not playing well, losing, maybe they would, in order to be in this position in the first place, you would have to kind of right that ship, at least to some degree. It might not look great, and you might still be able to get some wins. Maybe that would change the way that we viewed having to go to Austin to play Texas. But, Georgia was able to do what they did going to Austin. So Alabama, not saying that Alabama would do the same thing, but I think it would at least be an interesting conversation.
Were there any surprises with the college football playoff rankings to you?
Man, not really, to be honest with you. Let me pull it back up. I had the rank. There we go. I thought BYU might be a little bit higher. At the same time, I'm not surprised. I mean, a lot of people feel like they're getting slighted, them and Indiana, sitting there at 8 and 9. LSU coming in at 15. I thought that made sense to me. Missouri still being in the top 25. I was a little shocked by that. Now, when you look at their schedule, they're 6-2. And their 2 losses are to Texas A&M, who's number what? I think they only dropped to 14, and then Alabama, who's sitting there at number 11. And Alabama was on the road. In fact, was A&M on the road too? I think it was. So I mean, I guess that makes sense. I think anybody that the eye test, I don't think Missouri's a top 25 team. I personally would put Vanderbilt in there over them. I'd probably put South Carolina as far as just being better teams than Missouri. But I would probably say Missouri being in the top 25 was probably the most surprising to me. Was there anything that stood out to you at all, or did it all kind of make sense?
It ended up about what I thought, right? A lot of SEC schools in there, Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, all in the top 10, and then Bama at 11, Texas A&M 14, LSU 15, Ole Miss 16, which is pretty cool. And then Missouri and and then Army at the end. They're not an SEC team, but Vanderbilt was not in the college football playoff, but they were in the top 25. So they get no respect for their brand. But man, I'm with you. I think they ought to be a top 25 team, right? I mean, they beat Alabama. They barely lost to Missouri. It's the Georgia State game that really kills
That
them.
kills them. And it's unfortunate because what was the year, man? It was whenever I think Jacksonville State beat LSU, and that was like a 10-3 LSU team. I want to say that they were in the top 25, and despite that absolutely terrible loss, it was one of the years that Alabama was fighting to get into the college football playoff. And people, I don't remember the exact situation, but I do remember that they got upset by South Alabama, but they had a really strong resume otherwise. With this is a little bit different. I understand that and LSU had the brand name, and that matters. I mean, these are humans making these decisions, but Vanderbilt doing what they did as far as playing Auburn, going on the road and doing what they did against Auburn. I understand Auburn's not great, but that was the type of game going in. A lot of people were picking Auburn. That was kind of people like the matchups, Auburn's defense versus Vanderbilt's offense. And granted, their offense didn't have nearly as much success as they did in a lot of these other games, but their defense actually played, really, really, really well. Definitely well enough to win. And so they kind of showed a little bit of some completeness. Like the offense didn't have to carry them, in that type of situation or that type of game. And so, despite the Georgia State loss, and I mean, Missouri was coming up, Alabama was coming up. They had multiple top 10 matchups at that particular time. And so, I've said kind of from the beginning, I should hold that against them. I mean, I understand it's a result. You can't just ignore it. But I also think that was more of, them just looking ahead. And I don't think that's reflective of how good they are. And if you take that loss away from them and they've only got 2 losses, I mean, and it would be Texas and Missouri, which the Missouri game was, an overtime loss that Vanderbilt should have won. This team, it's a really, really good football team. And I think that I understand why the committee is not going to put them in the top 25 based off of that Georgia State loss. But in my mind, I definitely view them as a top 25 team, which is, how the other polls have them.
Yeah. But I mean, look, if you're I guess with the 12 teams, even if you're at the bottom of that, you get hot, you could sneak your way in. In the past, it was like you had 25 teams, but I mean, it didn't really matter, right? I guess it matters a lot more now. And that's, I guess, the magic of the college football playoff is that you're still alive.
Colorado's in there at number 20. I mean, they have a shot at the college football playoff. Like they're in this conversation. Clemson, who just had, a really rough loss to Louisville, who jumped up to number 22, but Clemson's still in the conversation, and they just lost a football game. Like Louisville's still in the conversation. I mean, there's a lot of teams right now that you look at and you say, pretty much everybody. I'd say everybody. I just Missouri's not doing it. Army, I mean, we'll have to wait and see, but this just feels like a very interesting case for the first year of a 12-team playoff, and I'll be very curious to see how it ends up playing out because I mean, you got Boise State in there right now. I think they have them playing Ohio State in the first round currently, kind of a 5-12 matchup. I would love to see Ohio State's. I think they're number 7 in the country in run defense against Genty. I think that would be a fascinating first round matchup. Obviously, a lot of people would be picking Ohio State, but I like the way that this is all starting to shake out. Alabama's still in the conversation. If they don't win this weekend, it doesn't matter. But I like the fact that we're having these discussions about a lot of different teams.
It'd be really cool to see Army make it. I mean, I know I wouldn't want to take a spot from Alabama, but just to know that those guys are still out there and they're playing for the love of the game. There's no NIL involved in that. They're under contract to play. And it would be really cool to just as a fan of our military and what that means and and the way that college football has changed, I love it when Army and Navy are both good, which they are this year. We'll see if Army is able to, to keep it going. Now let's talk about Alabama and LSU. The winner of this game is still alive for the college football playoff. The loser is most likely done for a shot to win the national championship. And when you look at matchups in this, I'll give you some of mine. I'm definitely curious to see Kyron Lacey against Alabama secondary, right? Who's going to match up against him, and how is Alabama going to take advantage of a banged up LSU offensive line? Can they force turnovers against Garrett Nussmeier? Is Alabama going to be able to move the ball? Is Milroe going to run it a little bit on LSU like he did last year? Those are the things I'm looking for. But, I mean, you kind of break it down even in more detail than that. Before you do it, let me remind everyone that we're brought to you by mybookie.ag. Use the promo code NEXTROUND to double your initial deposit. NFL, NBA, you got, right now you got college basketball, and Bama looks damn good in basketball. This is going to be a fun couple months here. Rolling right through football and the basketball. But go there, mybookie.ag, use that promo code NEXTROUND. Look, I've got Next Round shirt and hat to remind you guys. And also covercrimson.com. That's where you'll find us. Get on the message board. We're at right now. We tangle. We talk about all of this stuff. So the conversation never stops at the covercrimson.com message board on the site. We're in the process of remodeling right now, but we want you to be a part of it. So jump on there and hang out with us. You do the annual subscription, you get the Cover Crimson t-shirt. All right, Clint, give me some of your favorite breakdowns and matchups in this game.
Well, there's a couple. Number one, I'm interested in Alabama's offensive tackles against LSU's pass rush, because obviously, and this is why it's so critical. We've talked all the time about winning on early downs, put yourself in favorable situations. The fact that Alabama has not been overly effective or overly disciplined especially when they go on the road, like you see them against Tennessee, they would have, some early down success. And then they would, have a penalty to put them right back in a second and long situation. Maybe sometimes it was on second down to make a third and long situation. And then, or they just wouldn't have success on early downs. But it created a lot of situations where it was third and long, and Alabama just hadn't been effective in those situations so far this year. Your offensive tackles aren't set up for it. Jalen Milroe, when, opposing pass rushes were able to tee off on him, I don't think he's built for it. Now, sometimes, he can make some plays. He's absolutely a playmaker with his legs. He can extend, he can take off. Is he going to be willing to do that in this game? He hadn't been as willing to do it in recent weeks. Hopefully the bye week, if there has been something that he's been dealing with, I don't know one way or the other, but if there has been, hopefully the bye week has allowed him to kind of get out of whatever funk he is on that front. You started to see some signs of life against Missouri on that front. I just don't think he's still, I didn't see the same juice that you've seen from him in other games. So I want to see how Alabama's offensive tackles hold up against LSU's pass rush, because while I suggest that Alabama do everything they can to win on early downs and create favorable situations on second and third down, that's just, there are going to be times where you find yourself in more obvious passing situations. And it just seems like that Alabama has gotten very into, when it's second and long, if they run the football and don't have success on first down, their chances of running the football on second down is it feels like nil. So, you're talking about an LSU pass rush that's going to anticipate that some. And when you talk about Braden Swinson, 8 sacks, 34 pressures, he's tied for number 8 nationally as far as sacks so far this year. He's an Oregon transfer. And while he was at Oregon, he was there for 3 years and he only had 3 total sacks. Not a lot of production, didn't get a whole lot of opportunities. But last year, he saw some playing time for LSU, had a couple of sacks, and now this year, he's really starting to step up and make a lot of plays. But you also got Savion Jones. That guy's got like 4.5 sacks, 22 pressures, and he's a big body guy. I mean, 6'6", 280 pounds, but he doesn't play on the interior as much as you would think. Like the furthest you're going to see him play inside is like a 5-tech, 4-eye on the inside shoulder of the tackle, those types of situations. But he's getting a lot of edge snaps, and he's been pretty disruptive. I mean, I think through the first 5 games, I think he had 4.5 sacks. Hadn't been as productive over the last 3 as far as sacks are concerned, but he still managed to have 7 pressures, making some plays on that front. So I will be curious to see how those two play against Caden Proctor and Elijah Pritchett, because in those obvious passing situations, Alabama's tackles have not been great. And this is a road environment. It's going to be a loud stadium. Jalen Milroe's got to manage that, but your tackles have got to kind of help you out and play well. And, kind of with like it was with South Carolina, I don't think these guys are as good as what South Carolina has on the edges, but I think they're pretty darn close. And so that's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I like that matchup too. I'm so curious to see just, how Alabama handles the environment, how the discipline is. What about the penalties? Are they going to be able to go out there and snap the ball cleanly, not jump off sides, cut back on the holdings? Every time there's a game on the road now, I am curious about officiating. Seems to be it's worst at Tennessee, but it's bad everywhere these days. That factors into the ball game as well in my mind, but it's just kind of the luck of the draw when it comes to these things, but if you go out there and you're able to do the things you're supposed to do and not hurt yourself, you have a much better chance of taking care of business. So are there any other matchups that you're like, man, I'm really excited about?
Well, it's on the same side of the football, and we'll be talking about more of these. We'll kind of switch to the, Alabama's defense against LSU's offense, because like you said, with Kyron Lacey and those receivers, that's really intriguing as well. But sticking to the defense, we'll do those others in maybe an episode tomorrow. But Whit Weeks, LSU's linebacker against Jalen Milroe, really Alabama's entire run game, but Milroe is going to be a part of that. I think that's really fascinating, because when you see like what Marcel Reed, what he did for Texas A&M when they played LSU, I don't think Whit Weeks, who's been one of the best linebackers in the country, I don't think he had his best performance. I think part of that was just the strain that Reed puts on you as far as being a runner. I don't think Whit Weeks handled that very well. But here's the thing: he was expecting to play Connor Weigman, and so there was it was more of a last minute switch to Marcel Reed. And so he didn't really have the time to prepare. It was more of an on the fly situation. So is it just that Jalen Milroe has the ability to exploit some weaknesses in Week's game? Or is it, when he has time to prepare, this entire LSU defense has time to prepare for Milroe's legs? Are they more or better equipped to be able to handle that? That's what I'm curious to see. But bottom line is, if Alabama can capture similar magic as far as getting some things going on the ground with Milroe, I think that's going to open up a ton as far as your traditional run game and as far as your passing game. I think both Alabama and LSU, I wouldn't be shocked if you saw them. They're kind of similar in the sense where it's like sometimes you're wondering, you should be able to run the football better. Like watching LSU, it's the same problems that I have watching Alabama's offense, where it's like, you got a good offensive line. You got some pretty good running backs. Why aren't you committing more to the run game to complement what Nussmeier does in the passing game? I think they ask him to do a little bit too much sometimes, and that's where you find yourself in the games like Texas A&M, where he's turning the football over multiple times. So, does Alabama commit more to the traditional run game? We saw it against Missouri. I think it was, they really started to get that going. Will they do that? Will LSU do that? What does that mean as far as, the complementary passing games? Those are all things I'll be keeping an eye on.
Well, it's going to be nighttime in Death Valley for Alabama, and we're hoping that they don't turn the lights out on the Crimson Tide's chances to make the college football playoff. And, and this is why you live for these games, man. I mean, this is a rivalry game, and having Kalen DeBoer, 0 for 1 in rivalry games, I would love to see this be the one where he comes out and gets it done and is able to maybe exploit some of these matchups where Alabama has an advantage. And you talked about it before. In his career, these are the areas where he's done really well. I mean, look at the way that Alabama dominated Georgia in the beginning of that game after a week off.
Yeah, you've seen it time and time again from Kalen DeBoer's teams. I pointed out the difference between that first loss that he had. I think it was against Arizona, if I'm not mistaken. But when he was the head coach at Fresno State, yeah, it was against. Let's see, I actually got it right in front of me here. It was against Nevada. But what that was kind of a different feel because it was back-to-back cancellation. So they have been preparing for opponents during that 2020 season, and then at the last second, those games get canceled, due to limited players, guys catching COVID, whatever. And so it was a little bit different. They didn't have multiple weeks necessarily to prepare for Nevada. So I would actually kind of probably take that out of the equation the more that I look at it. And if you did that, Kalen DeBoer would be 7-0 in games where he's had multiple weeks to prepare, whether that be following a bye week or preparing for a bowl game. The typical long layover where you're focused on really one opponent. When he's shown up in those situations, his teams, Georgia, Alabama against Georgia earlier this year, last year, following the bye week, they played Oregon. They won that game. Oregon was a top, 10 team, I think number 8. Texas in the first round of the college football playoff last year, got to win over them. Got to win over Texas, in 2022 when he was at Washington in the bowl game. So, I mean, you've seen him have a lot of success in some big moments against some really good teams in the past. And so hopefully Alabama, shows up, because going on the road to Baton Rouge, it's a tough environment. A lot's going to be working against you. And so you got to come together and get some things done.
Talk about the teleconference earlier today. What did Kalen DeBoer say? Did you hear anything from the LSU side that was worth bringing up? Just kind of give us an update.
Just the typical, the typical talk. I mean, it was a lot of, positive talk about LSU when he was asked about certain guys. I did find it fascinating. He was asked about Nick Saban and just how involved Nick Saban has been. And he pretty much was like, he hadn't really been involved, but he went ahead and kind of laid out the fact that he understands exactly where he's coming from. Like, Nick Saban is trying to respect the fact that this is Kalen DeBoer's program now. And if you try to stay involved and you're giving him phone calls every once in a while and saying, hey, I'm not trying to bother you or nothing, but I just kind of want to, tell you this or tell you that, give you this suggestion, whatever. It's just, it kind of, you feel Nick Saban's presence a lot more, and that can be not a good thing. So I think Nick Saban understands that as a former coach now. He's giving Kalen DeBoer a lot of respect as far as stepping away, letting him do his thing, whether it works or it doesn't work. And he's there as an available resource if Kalen DeBoer wants it. And so I think that will probably be the case for at least this year, maybe even a couple of years, maybe even a few years. Some people might say, no, you need to be taking advantage of Nick Saban being there a lot more. But I think, more so it's like, I understand where Kalen DeBoer's coming from too. You're wanting to establish things and do things your way. You got to be yourself. And so, maybe as time continues to kind of, go or progress or whatever, you'll see them kind of communicate more. It's not that they're not communicating at all. It's just that's kind of limited during the season. So you might see more in the off season or hear more in the off season, or maybe you don't. Maybe it happens and neither one of them really talk about it. But I just thought it was really fascinating because everybody thought, even though Nick Saban's retiring, he's still got an office there in Tuscaloosa. He's still getting paid by the university, and he's still going to be very involved in the program. And it's like, if you think about how coaches operate and stuff, and especially the intimidation factor or potential intimidation factor of following the footsteps of Nick Saban, I think both coaches are actually handling that transition pretty well.
It's not for everyone. They always say it's follow the guy that followed the guy, but that doesn't always have to be the case. You take over a good program and it's tough, but you lose this one. It's been a long time since Alabama's lost 3 games in a season. And I'm not putting it all on Coach DeBoer. I like Coach DeBoer. But these are the ones you want to win right here. These are the rivalry games.
Well, the fact that, you passed that first big test with Georgia, and really he should get a tremendous amount of credit for that, because what happens if Alabama loses that game? It's like, especially like from the Georgia side of things, man, Nick Saban ain't there no more. Daddy ain't there no more to take care of you. Now you're ours. And there's like there can become a mental hurdle there with what is, in my opinion, one of the 2 most dangerous programs in the country. Georgia's one. The other, in my opinion, is Texas. And that's not just this year. This is long term. So, getting a win over Georgia was so big, but how it finished in the second half, the fact that you almost blew it, that kind of, people almost feel like the first half was fluky. And so you really don't get the credit that you deserve for that. And since then, You saw what Nick Saban really hadn't done in Alabama too much, which is lose to opponents that he shouldn't in Vanderbilt, even though Vanderbilt's good. And then, a rivalry game where it's really a toss up. You saw what happened. The offense plays poorly against Tennessee, and they get and Tennessee gets the win. And so I was like, okay, you've got LSU, and you still got Oklahoma too, but they're really not considered. It's Tennessee, it's LSU, and it's Auburn. You've lost to Tennessee. You've beaten Georgia, and I would say, some people consider Georgia a rivalry now, but right now I'd probably say Alabama's 0-1 in those core rivalry games. I think, you don't want to be going 1-2. You need to try to avoid that. And if you can get to 3-0, you can beat LSU and you can beat Auburn. That's a pretty darn good start, even though you lost a close one to Tennessee.
Mm-hmm. Hey, the season's still here, but got to take care of business on Saturday. What you got going on? covercrimson.com.
Yeah, the standard. I actually threw up an interesting thread. I think it was yesterday, maybe the day before, but just great answers from everybody. I was curious to know everybody's answer as far as favorite Alabama LSU memory. It can be a moment, it could be a play, it can be a game. If holding Leonard Fournette to 31 yards.
Yeah.
That could be it if you want. It could be a moment like TJ Yeldon catching that touchdown pass from AJ McCarron, that kind of screen. It can be Julio Jones, what he did as far as his long touchdown. It could be Rashad Johnson's 3 interception performance. There's just been so many different moments that I was, kind of wondering where people would take it. And the responses have been fantastic. So if you haven't already, go subscribe at covercrimson.com and join in on that conversation. We got a bunch of LSU Alabama stuff, both happening now and continuing to come up throughout the week. So you'll want to be a part of those conversations.
It'll be a lot of fun. All right, check it out there, guys. And thanks for hanging out with us here on Cover Crimson. Like and subscribe, thumbs up. I know it's a lot to ask for. Hit the bell. But you guys can do it. It'd be complicated for the LSU community. They're probably already in the bag today, So we'll keep it simple for them, like a DUI checkpoint. Give us the thumbs up. Thanks for being here. But you Alabama folks, like, subscribe, thumbs up, hit the bell, and get ready for one of the real great games in the SEC, Alabama and LSU. We'll be back with more. We got, if you didn't catch it yet, Elephant in the Room with Jake Coker, new episode out. Mike Johnson's All-American Report, new episode out yesterday, and then we'll have more content tomorrow. We'll lead you right up to the game on Saturday, and then we'll be on after the game. And I've had a lot of people tell me, man, I watch after the game. I see you and Clint. Well, come on, see us, man. We'll be up. We'll be ready for you right after the Alabama and LSU game wraps. We'll be talking about the game and the day of college football, and hopefully we'll all be celebrating with a coldie and talking some football. But thank you guys, and we will see you soon. And from the bottom of my heart, roll Tide.